Venerable Geshe Tsultim Sanje Shedon Zoje Chonala Shangyo Bado Dane Shosuke Lage Shugyo Jebe Sonam Dola Pensha Sanje Rubar Sho Sanje Shedon Zoje Chonala Shangyo Bado Dane Shosuke Lage Shugyo Jebe Sonam Dola Pensha Sanje Rubar Sho Sanje Shedon Zoje Chonala Shangyo Bado Dane Shosuke Lage Shugyo Jebe Sonam Dola Pensha Sanje Rubar Yo Hola, Majena Gitana, Bisengi Tangi Tendo. Tojalana Meba, Yanda Bazobi Sanji, Compound, Energy, Tobra Shago, the Tobra Chevy Chedo, Tambe Cherum, Buchisenia, Beconos, and Uji Semji, JSM on the Sembrico.
Let me remind all of ourselves to cultivate the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of liberating infinite, kind, mother sentient beings. With that kind of bodhicitta motivation, we should all participate in this teaching.
Share Sanji Compound Toyota. Ata Havradana, Quadan Song Dumeli Tony, that nigger to do the Deva, Tambaki the Dayak, whatever you was.
I believe that all of us are seeking the best of everything, both in the short term and long term, for ourselves and for all other sentient beings. In other words, what I meant to say here is that we are all seeking fortunate rebirths as our temporary goals, if you will, which would be the short-term goals. And for our long-term goals, we are seeking complete freedom from the suffering of samsara or cyclic existence, which is nirvana or liberation, and complete enlightened state of Buddhahood as our ultimate spiritual goal. So in this life, we should all see to it that we strive to accomplish a goal that is of benefit to both self and others in an ultimate sense. So we have indeed found this wonderful opportunity to be able to strive for and accomplish a goal that from long-term perspective is of great benefit to both self and others. So having found this wonderful opportunity, we should all make sure that we don't fail from our side to grab the opportunity, to make use of the opportunity. We find in both sutras, which are the scriptures containing the words of Buddha, and also in the commentarial treatises on Buddha's teachings called Shastras, many different methods or practices are being presented that we could all, use. But having said that, just what I want to remind all of ourselves, this particular moment is what great Indian Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Shantideva has got to say, and he said this in his Bodhisattva's Way of Life, a guide to Bodhisattva's Way of Life called Bodhisattva Char Avatar. And Geshe is quoting the lines from his memory, and Shantideva tells us that having found this precious human life, which metaphorically speaking is like a boat to cross the ocean or the river, we should try to cross this ocean of suffering and so deliver ourselves, if you to the other side of the ocean or to the state of liberation. The point that is being made here is that we have to recognize our own predicament or the situation we find ourselves in. So we are in this ocean of samsara with all kinds of suffering. But that being said, we are not completely, helpless, because we have found this wonderful boat-like precious human rebirth or life. And by making use of this life, this boat, we should be able to cross this ocean of samsara and free ourselves from the state of suffering. So having found this, useful and wonderful boat to cross the ocean of samsara, we should make sure that we don't lose this boat. We don't, fail to use this boat. So Shantideva said the whole thing in a stanza. So in the first two lines of the stanza, he tells us that we have found this wonderful human life, which is like a useful boat that we could use to cross the ocean of suffering or samsara. In the second two lines of the stanza, he tells us, if we don't do that, then what happens is that it's very hard to find this kind of precious human life over and again in the future. Once we miss this opportunity, we lose this opportunity, it would be rather very difficult to find this kind of life, this kind of boat in the future. So understanding that, so then, what we need to do is we need to wake up from the sleep of ignorance and make best use of our opportunity and ability to liberate ourselves from the state of suffering. So that advice Shantideva gives is, I think, very important advice, and that applies to all of us. So he's telling us, don't kind of fall into the slip of ignorance, or just kind of, or if we take it to mean ordinarily, don't waste our time just sleeping, meaning that we just kind of waste the whole opportunity before us, but just wake up from this deep sleep of ignorance and make the best use of our precious human life. And don't fall under the influence of laziness and waste this precious life. And if we look carefully at our own life situations, most of us waste so much time being under the influence of laziness. So we need to work, for living, and I believe that everybody has to work about 8 hours a day. And there are ways in which we can, use our work situation into something that we can generate great meaning in life. But speaking purely from spiritual point of view, even working just for the sake of this lifetime, 8 hours or more, or whatever the case may be, that would be considered as being under the influence of laziness. We are just simply wasting our precious human life just to get by with our life, or just to fulfill the needs of this lifetime. So from totally spiritual point of view, simply doing that much for the life is considered a waste of time and being under the influence of laziness. So when we talk about different types of laziness, one of the laziness we talk about is called laziness of being attached to, literally translating, frivolous activities. Now the frivolous activities are to do with, activities of just this lifetime. And of course, the important thing to keep in our mind is when we are very attached to this life and the interest of this life, so out of attachment and all other delusions are, focused on this lifetime, when we spend so much time, whether it's in a workplace or doing all other activities, that is considered as a form of laziness of being attached to frivolous activities. So out of attachment to, basic necessities of life, to name and, fame and reputation and all of the stuff that you all know very well, is considered from a spiritual point of view being under the influence of that particular kind of laziness. But that being said, and which we need to understand, recognize, but also I often tell you how we could also use the 8 hours of work period, if you will, if that's our schedule, 8 hour work per day, we could also kind of bring spiritual meaning into our work. So it doesn't have to be just ordinary work. It could also be something, spiritually meaningful. So how can we make our ordinary work into something spiritually meaningful, you ask? Of course, one of the most important factors, if not the most important, is to do it with what we call the proper spiritual motivation.
That's a carresana, Pesonti, Nani Matangalamo, Matangon, Tatrin Legacy Dogin. Legacy at the Hats and Togotan, Sendi, Togotan Samaimpe. And send the town, treated numbers of a tune about of your Dugundo. The Druba Shepala, Tinchin Gugundo. Tinchin Yomala Shepala, Tata has me Lonata, do the tune, taking your marriage. Sonsa, that train took a shower, church shower, drill, chase, toggle, so it turned the Legacy and so at the Dribney. And they so at the Pejuta and the church and the tongue in some in those and Tabokuno was done. And then parting at the Tamati and Takara never shagur Mataya, Gunoya was done Tamati, Majunan de Gamars, don't that Majunan de Gamars.
So when we get up in the morning and before we leave our home for work, if we cultivate this kind of motivation, that the very purpose of me going to the work is, of course, realistically speaking and practically speaking, I need to work to pay the bills. But at the same time, there's more to it. It's not just to get by life, going to the work, but by going to the work, I'm able to provide resources to myself, so that, outside the work, if you will, that I find time to do my practice, so that I can provide resources to be able to sustain my practice. Of course, I could go and beg, on the street. But that does not seem to be conventionally, acceptable to the people in the society. That's not a normative behavior. So I have to follow the rules and regulations of the society, and so people conventionally are expected to go to work. And so you earn, so bring the earnings, and so that you're able to use it to sustain your practice and to be able to provide yourself more, opportunities and resources to do your practice. So we cultivate that kind of motivation, and then we go to work, and of course then whatever earnings we have, we also try to use it as much as we can to, to fulfill our motivation. It's not like, we're tricking ourselves, have a good motivation, go there and make the money, and then, do something else. Well, that's, disparity there. But we try to do as much as we can, the earnings, to sustain our practice.
This is a daughter.
So if we really cultivate good motivation and go make the earnings and then use it for something else, I think Geshe would like to use my expression. Then we become dodos, I think.
That legacy is going to be when Shava Shekhi on the Mandra Shekers. During Yungum Sani seconds, Sani or Nani seconds, those then you might hear the two say that, and this is Yammer. I think,
So, but that's not the only one kind of laziness we need to deal with. The laziness of being, stuck with, all kind of worldly concerns and activities, and just to get by this life, or to fulfill all the, the interests of this lifetime. But the other kind of laziness that we also need to watch out, and which is what we call laziness of procrastination. And we are all very vulnerable to this kind of laziness. We all have to watch out with this, because we may not, even if we don't have to work, let's say, for whatever reasons, but we could still easily be under the influence of this form of laziness. Okay, today I'm kind of, busy, so I'll do my practice tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, we push it even further, right? Okay, today is even more busy, so it will be the next day. Okay? And as we keep on procrastinating our practice, so before we get the chance to do our practice, the death strikes us. Okay, life comes to an end, and so we lose the whole opportunity. So we all have to be very careful, with this kind of laziness of procrastination.
And
then also there's another kind of laziness, which is called, we might call the the laziness of sort of underestimation, which is to say that when it comes to doing spiritual practice, we kind of have this sort of you always tell ourselves, you know what, I can't do it. I'm not up to do this practice, and we don't have the courage, to take the risk, if you will, to do the practice. But we always have an excuse. I can't do it. This is not for me, or whatever the case may be. So, but that itself is discouraging oneself, underestimating one's own ability to do a practice is a form of laziness.
So
So the point I'm trying to make here is, we should see that we are not under the influence of any of or all of these different types of laziness, and then we miss the opportunity to cultivate spirituality or to practice Dharma. So as much as we have to see that we are not influenced by different forms of laziness, and then we miss the whole opportunity to practice, but we also need to see that the practice which we are going to adopt or we are going to follow, the spirituality, is an authentic spirituality. So it's not enough for us to say, I'm going to do this practice because, everybody says this is a good one, But we really have to take time to find out whether the practice or the spirituality that we are going to adopt and follow is authentic in the sense that has been highly realized peoples, the masters, who followed this kind of a way or the path, and they have reached very high realization. Which means this path is authentic. It leads to the spiritual goals that we would like to accomplish. It's not a mistaken path or mistaken way. And so is it grounded in what we call valid reasonings? Are there good rationales, reasons to support that this is an authentic practice? So we have to really make sure that spirituality that we are going to adopt is based on sound reasonings, valid reasonings, and that it has been followed by other practitioners, and they have reached high levels of realization. And so when we really examine the authenticity of path, we really have to see that does it really lead to higher spiritual goals? Not that sometimes we can easily be duped by some people say, if you do this kind of practice, then you will have certain kind of clairvoyant power, so then you can tell what's going on in somebody's mind a little bit, or or you have some kind of extrasensory power to to talk about or to tell the story. But that's not good enough as a criteria to judge whether spirituality is authentic or not. So the point I'm trying to make here is, we really, in order to find out authenticity of a path or a practice, we have to say whether it really provides the complete structure of the path that unmistakably leads us to fulfilling the spiritual goals. Yeah, so it's not enough to say that this kind of practice is good, because then you get some kind of extra, ESP, sort of thing, and so you're okay. No, that's not good enough. And I think great Indian master Acharya Dharmakirti, in his Valid Cognition treatises, Brahmanas says, as Geshe says, if that much is enough, then we do find sentient beings with certain extra abilities. For example, vultures have this extra sense of what exists at a great distance that our eyes do not see, but they can see, behind certain things that exist and we can. So that means, they have certain amazing power that we humans don't have. Now, does that mean that now we cultivate the vultures as our guru? Because they got some power. Well, that makes no sense. Or even if we believe that some of the, for lack of a better words in English, maybe not the demons, some invisible, not the good guys, but the bad guys, invisible beings, they have certain extra sensory power. They do have certain power, and so, but we can't go and cultivate them as our gurus.
다 나도 가르고 위해서는 문에 돈에 세메 쉐브 세메 쉐브 간 람마나와 땡긴 그 세메 쉐브 정하랑 저거다 예순 당고에 선서 때 나게 담배 해줘서 버때 다 건조 쉐브 담배 좀배 다 세메 쉐브 문에 돈에 인하면서 람마나와 땡긴 세메 쉐브 차고요.
So we need to rely upon a person who is what we call, for lack of a better word in English, called a valid person. In Tibetan called seme kibu, somebody who cannot make mistakes. Okay, a valid, authentic person. So we find such a person in Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical teacher who is the founding teacher of Buddhism. Because many other masters have relied upon his teachings and they become highly realized beings.
But in Chirag, Semer Japan roll up and you but the usual success. Semer Shabbat Sema, Shabbatam. Semer Japan roll up paying, but then that the name of which is.
And again, great Dharmakirti has said in praise to Shakyamuni Buddha that you are, a truly an authentic, valid person, not only a valid person in that sense, but you have this infinite, infinite caring compassion for sentient beings. So therefore, you are qualified to be a spiritual guide.
That in this one, Tangaranzo Sanjay Kumpa drawing Sunny, Randa Yen Yen saw Gay Chevata. Ane Jinzi Ane. So if we would like to go to Buddhahood, that as our ultimate spiritual destination, then there are a number of things that we must do or learn to do. Number one, instead of considering self as more important than the others, we have to kind of reverse it, and we have to understand that others are more important than self. So others before self. Number two, instead of cherishing self like anything over the others, now we have to change our attitude and learn to cherish others more than the self. So cherishing others is much more important than self-cherishing attitude or self-centeredness. Ran Kebran Zembe, Tenzin Tang, Yen Kebran Zembe, Tenzin, the Shenda Yuan Ten, the Kari Intimate, Mudus and Naratsu, those Takshin and Tigers.
Of course, we are not saying that, everything I'm saying here, so we have to kind of accept them, based on the faith. We have every right and we should investigate the matters, and why is it important to cherish others more than the self? And so in the Buddhist literatures, we find descriptions of or explanations of what are the demerits or the disadvantages of self-centeredness or self-cherishing attitude, and what are the benefits or the merits of cherishing other sentient beings. So we can, study them, and we can investigate these matters.
That's on the pen of second, that no son on the singer, that soon you are. Sanjay jumped in the Shen Kunzi Yuntin Kundimba, Yuntin Kunda Denkin, Shen Jit, Samolope, Seba, Bamba. Tangaranzo, each is a rare bus. In the Buddhist literatures, we talk about how Shakyamuni Buddha, as an example of a Buddha, or completely enlightened being,
So when we say Buddha, by definition, what it really means to talk about is a Buddha is a person who is completely free of all kinds of negativities, delusions, and mental obscurations, with all kinds of faults and errors and mistakes, And a Buddha is a person who is completely enlightened in the sense that all the remarkable qualities that are there to be obtained or actualized are embodied in an enlightened person. So such a person is called a Buddha.
So the tang ngarazo she tamji yongken. Say ju she the chamal ban ga do zongzo xin yongken. Da she say gui ya de da dang ge ge da ba ge se. Da ma ji yue de da kang de. Da yuan de ge da yun yun ji bu ji cha de ba.
So now we kind of put Buddha, so to speak, on the one side, who is completely enlightened, who does not have any faults or errors or defilements or negativities and mental obscurations, but who has all the enlightened qualities, and there's nothing left for Buddha to be actualized, because all the remarkable qualities are embodied in him or her. Then now we look at ourselves as ordinary people. Where do we stand now? Compare ourselves to Buddha. We are just the opposite. We are just very rich in terms of negativities and delusions and mental obscurations, and we just, have too many of them. And these are the things really are not good stuff. We need to get rid of, but we somehow keep them, and we are very rich. And in terms of realizations, we hardly have any. When we talk about remarkable qualities, how many do we have? If we are fortunate, we might have just few, if maybe not. And so, this is our situation. Completely deluded, rich in, all the delusions and all this stuff we shouldn't be rich in, proud of. But in terms of realizations, we really don't have much.
But
we have to recognize the fact that there was a time where a Buddha, or including Shakyamuni Buddha, was just like us, completely deluded person. Okay, so that could be many, many eons ago. Okay, but it was true. So Buddha did not come out of a blue as a Buddha, like randomly appeared as a Buddha, but that cannot happen. But there was a time, we were all same. Buddha was just like us, very deluded, full of, rich in negativities and all of that. But Buddha changed the course of actions and attitudes and went different direction.
Sanjay Tangaju Parulita, Chebe Chemba Kuji Arvas, the Yogoya Karishevasana, Sanjay Kamdin the Yen Kepran Zin Ranyawato, Tangarajo Ran Kepran Zin Yen Yawato in Sani, there's a Cheba Chembuchago at the Nikton Chavres.
So there was a time any Buddha was just like us, ordinary person, deluded, a lot of negativities, and not many good qualities. But there are Buddhas now, and we compare ourselves to them, there is a big difference between us. And why this big difference? How has this happened? If we wonder, is Buddha learned to cherish others much more than the self, whereas we have pursued the same path that we have been pursuing for ages. We have been cherishing self over others, but Buddha somewhere, changed their attitudes and cherish others more than the self, and that's the direction they took, and that's why they ended up in a different state. So we have Buddha as a role model for ourselves because we would like to be a Buddha. And if that's what we want to be, then now we have to learn to cherish others and let go self-cherishing attitude. And so we talk about when we say let go self-cherishing attitude, we don't mean that okay now you can't do anything for yourself and it's time to commit suicide or something. No. What we're talking about is that we should learn to counteract our self-centeredness, selfishness. That's the part we need to let go. But of course we need to take care of ourselves. But letting go self-cherishing attitude doesn't mean we let go taking care of ourselves. But we learn a new attitude, if you will, to cherish others more than the self.
That kasi dik kanda chembo dos kasi ngejik ten ma shuchar dina ali chat ji shugins ani de geshi shenga wa ke ani taba tangi chembo taba sheba la se yitin ba tada ta mintu ba ji la lab grace kana sons.
So last week we did talk about what the great Kadampa Geshe Chengawa has got to say, and he was telling us that we need to adopt attitude and behavior which are really different from the worldly people. Right? We talked about that, and I thought these are still very important. And I today want to recapitulate and to focus on the reasons why what he is saying is important, and we need to put into practice.
That
Yes. And so I'm going to continue where we left off in the text before.
Tate kare se na jitemba nam na se ta ngara so jitemba nam gis ngara so ta mun ne da senje le senje we sen do senje le sanje ke ban jingar was ta ngara so do sin ngara so do su sin na men do ta ngara so do lon do ba du sa ne senje sanje ni sin na ne chura kare ke ban jinge se na sanje ke ban jing sang do we kar sang do was.
So what do we as worldly people do or think about? And Geshe Chengawa says that worldly people, if we are given a choice, who do we want to cherish, Buddhas or sentient beings? We pick Buddhas over sentient beings. That's what we as worldly people do. We want to cherish Buddhas, but we really don't seem to care about sentient beings.
Junse karare sengdo na ane sanjela mugu ba zai mong sengara samalo ga sanjela mugu ba zan yungu marawata dana jangro wata pena dana yue ban de jeta dewe dele chance sa dewe sanjela junse yi kibran zingures.
Maybe part of the reason why we choose Buddha over sentient being is because, we find Buddha very agreeable. It's easy to kind of relate to Buddha, and so we can easily respect Buddhas. Most of us, we don't have problem doing that. Maybe some of us have to learn how to do that, but still Buddhas are pretty easy in that sense to, relate to. Whereas when it comes to sentient beings, we have the real challenge. And it's not easy to cherish sentient beings, but Geshe Chengawa was saying that, we got to cherish sentient beings, and there are, 4 reasons which we could use to learn to cherish sentient beings. Again, when we talk about cherishing Buddha, we must not have some kind of very abstract notion of a Buddha. Cherishing Buddha means like there's somewhere up in the cyberspace there's somebody called Buddha in a sort of abstract, very lofty figure image somewhere there. That's what we need to cherish.
Sanje nguen jingdu sanje nguen jiba shagure. Sanje nguen jingdu zane dinyi separ pangbe ta kangsa sanje phagwa sen kangsa jigwe na. Buddha
is, not an abstract state necessarily. We can recognize beings or people who are Buddhas, enlightened beings. So when we talk about a Buddha or enlightened being, what we're really talking about is someone who is completely free of the 2 types of mental obscuration. Number 1, called delusions, kleshas, and number 2, obscuration to omniscient wisdom. So a Buddha is someone who is completely free of these 2 types of mental obscuration. In addition to that, Buddha is someone who has omniscient knowledge or wisdom that can directly or non-conceptually perceive everything that exists, in the past, in the present, and in the future simultaneously. And also Buddha is someone who has this enlightened speech quality to be able to fulfill the spiritual needs of sentient beings from different backgrounds.
So that sanji 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 good song the tools the
the point I'm trying to make here is when we cultivate faith or trust in a Buddha or Buddhas, we do that by reflecting on the enlightened qualities of Buddha's body, physical, form, speech, and mind.
That is the something those. That's something that Sengi given Zingo, the Junsi Yi going to give us that, Junsi Tambut Karasenas.
So according to Geshe Chegaba, there are 4 reasons we could use to learn to cherish sentient beings.
Tambut the data, Kore's Koana Sengi Tamalo, Kore's Sengi Nams, like Pama in Begoni given Zingos. Guys, that Sengi Kandaki in a Koala Nebe, Sengi Kandaki in a Rang Pata Ma, Shemani with Tamerta, Matas, Pata Ma, and then Simoda, name Bun. So the
reason number 1 that's been given is we have to recognize that all sentient beings have become our kind parents. Of course, we use the parents as an example, but we could also say that all sentient beings have been our brothers, sisters, best friends, and so we have that kind of relationship with sentient beings.
That and the Chamal Rankadi Chimboke, and a Pamatanzo, and a Dungayon, Covenant, Dungayon, the Sunny, the rank, Keper and Zini, and the Pember to go to.
So with that kind of connection between us and sentient beings, while we have been in samsara, cyclic existence, sentient beings have become our moms, our dads, our brothers, sisters, best friends, and all of that. And now they are in a difficult situation because samsara is not a happy place. It has a lot of suffering. And so it is our, responsibility, if you will, to help, if we can, sentient beings to be free from suffering. So the way we cherish sentient beings is that there's nobody out there, who is to be excluded, right? Or no, not this particular XYZ sentient being. I have nothing to do with. No, every sentient being has to be kind of recognized as someone that we need to benefit, that we need to cherish.
That is never shared Round to Ying never shaving in a deal, Lampa never seen the Shijumandoas.
So we adopt that kind of attitude. If all sentient beings have been very kind to us, as mom, dad, brother, sister, sibling, whatever, then, really, we cannot think of harming them, can we? And if someone even harms us, if we are in that mindset that sentient beings have been kind to us and we need to cherish them, then we are not going to retaliate against those beings.
That's so in Sengilang was Rang Pen Taba in Sunny, and the Rang turned that and it
From another side, as we benefit sentient beings and cherish sentient beings, we are also taking care of our own spiritual needs. It's not like we're just totally doing something for them and our own needs are left off on the side. But by benefiting them, we are indirectly benefiting ourselves. So when we talk about fulfilling our own needs or the purposes, we can talk in terms of short-term goals and long-term goals, right? Or the short-term benefits and long-term benefits. An ultimate benefit that we can give ourselves is to become a complete enlightened being or a Buddha, and that has to come through cherishing sentient beings. It's by way of cherishing sentient beings we are able to become an enlightened being. So that is fulfilling the ultimate goal for our own sake. To fulfill our temporary needs also, we are very much dependent on sentient beings. Without other sentient beings, we cannot really fulfill even our temporary needs. So as we really reflect on these matters, we should try to go more into details as much as we could, so that we really, bring substance to our reflection. Not like sort of in a generic sense, kind of like, we kind of feel like, okay, they are kind and nice, but really there's no substance to our thought. But really, as we consider the details, for example, temporarily speaking, where do we get all our basic necessities of life? Food, clothing, shelter, and everything else, by the grace of and through the help of other sentient beings. So when we really think this matter deeply, without other sentient beings, we can't think of something that we alone can do, for ourselves. Without, without the other sentient beings in the picture, there's nothing we can think of that we can say, okay, this is just on my own. I don't need anybody here. So if there's such thing, that exists sort of without any direct relationship with others, is maybe just our own consciousness, just the mind. But even that one, in order to take rebirth, of course from the womb of the mothers, we assume that, is we have to conceive in the womb of a mother. That means we need somebody else, that we need to conceive into somebody's womb, right? We don't conceive into our own womb. So, we need somebody there. So the point I'm trying to drive home here is that through all possible ways and means, we should think about how other sentient beings are kind to us, here and now, temporarily, and also in terms of fulfilling our ultimate spiritual goals. So if sentient beings are kind to us temporarily and from ultimate perspective, then who do we really need to benefit? Sentient beings. Ordinarily speaking, if somebody has been kind to us, and if we don't repay their kindness, it's very unbecoming of us, isn't it? So it's the same here. Sentient beings have been kind to us here and now, and in fulfilling the long-term goals. So therefore, we need to repay their kindness. We need, otherwise it will be unbecoming on our part. So the point I just made here is, it is relying upon sentient beings through their grace and help that we are able to fulfill our temporary needs as well as our ultimate spiritual goals.
이 숨지고네 세계인 간다질이야 단위 person 간다질이나 파마수 간다질이나 never say matters.
So if we have that deep understanding, then of course we cannot harm any sentient being through our actions of body, speech and mind, because there is no such thing as friends, enemies and strangers, because all of them are our friends.
That's it. That 이거는 다 아래 타마도 가르쳐서는 세계의 다바이나 산지도 전주선 받던 길 최바표 고쳐요 그래서.
And another reason that's given, that we could use to cherish sentient beings is, if we cherish sentient beings, that amounts to cherishing Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. If we help sentient beings, so that's like same as making offerings to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
산지도 전주선을 최바표 있나? 아니 생계를 아니 표 고쳐 말이스.
If we help or make offerings to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that would not be the same as making offerings to sentient beings.
That 생계를 펜다 생계를 아니 집바땅 네 괴외 요지들 소선장 펜바 두트브 있나? 네 산지도 전주선 받던 줄안다. 던지 펜바 두바데 체요 말이다.
On the other hand, if we fulfill the needs of the sentient beings, if we practice generosity, and we help the poor and needy, now that help amounts to making offering to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as well.
당연히 그래서 빼지 해변 저런 등유연도 누구에서 왜냐 파마를 빼버리 파메에 부글을 제동심 해다 여러 봤어. 그래서 미 얘기게 부글도 저런 게 버텨봤다 파마를 빼버리잖아. 부글을 게 버리는 파마가 그래 봤어. 부글을 빼고 고쳐 파마를 빼면 부글 빼고 고쳐야 말이지. 부글은 게 맞지 빼면은 파마를 빼고 고쳐야. 그래서 파마 얘기를 했어.
And last time I used this example, and you may be able to recall this. I said, like, let's take an example of very loving parents who love their kids like anything. So now, if you make a gift to the children, this really makes the parents very happy. They are very delighted. So it's like you make a gift to the children, but parents feel like they have been given a gift as well, and they feel very happy. But if you make a gift to the parents, that wouldn't be the same as giving a gift to the kids. The kids don't think they got a gift. Okay? So it's just like that. When we make a gift to sentient beings, that amounts to giving a gift to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But if we give a gift to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, sentient beings don't think we got the gifts.
Okay. That's my gift.
So now don't forget that. Yes. So the point beside this is, like, when parents get really old, so the kids should take care of them. So don't forget them. So Geshe Tsultim gave us those 4 reasons which we talked about last week and did some today, why we need to learn to cherish sentient beings, more than the Buddhas. I think I also quoted some words from sutras last week, where it is said that if we pay salutation to or prostrate to Tathagatas or the Buddhas, that would not be the same as saluting or prostrating to Bodhisattvas. But if we prostrate to Bodhisattvas, that would be the same as prostrating to or paying respect to Buddhas. So I think we also use that example from the sutra, which says, if we pay respect to the waxing moon, the different phases of the moon, then that would be amount to paying sort of appreciation to the full moon. But if you just appreciate the full moon, that would not be the same as appreciating all those waxing moons or the different phases of the moon.
That's
just to use an example. We are not saying that we as a Buddhist go for refuge in the moon or sun or those planets, but there are people who do because they think these are objects of refuge. So for them, because they need to find a way to respect the moon and sun. Otherwise, you might get this notion like, oh, we are talking about now need to seek refuge in moon and sun and stars and all that. We are not saying that.
Okay. So the
basic kind of a contention and the premise of the Geshe Changaba is that, if we want to be really spiritual practitioners, we have to do almost just the opposite of the worldly beings, So our behavior and attitudes, should not accord with the attitudes and behaviors of ordinary sentient beings, ordinary people. So Geshe Changaba talks about these 4 different ways in which we need to do it differently than the ordinary beings. The number 1 we talked about is ordinary people cherish Buddhas over sentient beings. Now we need to learn to cherish sentient beings over Buddhas. So that's just the opposite, Now the second point he's making is ordinary people cherish self over others. Now we need to learn to cherish others over self. So why do we need to bring about that kind of inner transformation in us? Like instead of cherishing self, now we need to kind of a change, a shift in our thinking and cherish others more than the self. Is since beginningless time until now, that is how we have done. We have cherished self like anything, but what it has done to us is it has always got us into more trouble and suffering. That's because, any kind of negative karmas or negativities we create and accumulate are related to that self-cherishing attitude. A great Indian realized Buddhist scholar Acharya Chandrakirti says in his supplement to the middle way of Madhyamik Avatar, and Geshe quoted the stanza from his memory, so where he says that first there arises the conception of I, there's the grasping at I, because I is so important. Yeah. And then arises the conception of mind, or grasping at mind. And so this is why we end up, in different states of suffering. So first, when we talk about the 2 types of grasping at self and grasping at the self of a person and grasping at self of phenomena. So first there arises grasping at I is so important. Then anything related to I, which is mine, is important. My car, my house, my nose, my ears, my body, my hair, and all of that. Okay? So everything to do with mind is so important. And this is how we bump into problems and suffering, because of these graspings.
They want to laying a basta, laying a basta in Namita, around coins and that doing in a soba.
So because of that kind of grasping, we categorize beings into us versus them, or my side versus the other side. And so we cherish people on my side because it's all mine, my friends, and then everybody else over that side is something to hate or we don't like. And so in that way, our attitudes are all discriminatory and biased towards people, mine and their side, and then we indulge in many different negative actions.
So that you more than never chamalo. Joseph Garrison, rank Gibbons, the begins in Dangzil, then Chunga.
So, all kinds of negativities that we find ourselves creating or indulging in, and all kinds of delusions that we experience, basically all of them are, grounded in self-cherishing attitude and self-grasping. So, these are the two main sources of all our delusions and negativities.
Gitanji Kabel, that's the Bayan Jiwa, the Gitanji Kabel, Tambo Rang, then nobody against those in the Higdos.
So, people have a saying, probably Jesus says, you might find similar sayings in other languages and maybe here too, like first me and then others. Yeah, so that's how our thinking goes.
But the church is Jangita.
So, from Dharma point of view, that's completely contradictory to the Dharma principle. So from Dharma point of view, we have to say first they and then me, right? First others and then me. But that's what we are saying, or thinking usually.
That is
So we have to be really focused and don't get caught up in hustle and bustle kind of thinking. So as I speak to you, I also speak to myself. It's not like I'm talking about you. I include myself. Our life is so much caught up in hustle and bustle thing, because of our way of thinking. First me and then others and all of that. So we really need to pay attention to these things, all of us, including myself. So the true practitioners, they think first others and then self or me. See, so this is what we need to learn to do. So we need to learn to cherish others. We need to learn to let go self-cherishing attitude. Self-cherishing attitude is not something we really need to learn about. That's we have to let go that part. To be able to cherish others, of course, we need to see the benefits of doing that, right? Or maybe in today's language, the profits. What profits do we get out of cherishing others? Now, when we think about spiritual practice and fulfilling our spiritual goals, one of the essential things we need to do is accumulate merit, positive energy, and wisdom. Okay, so we could only do that with regard to other sentient beings. So sentient beings provide us the opportunity, okay, to accumulate merit and wisdom. Ordinarily speaking, when we think in terms of the vegetables or the grains, and that are all part of our food, where do we get them? We get them from fields, right? We have to have fertile soil or the lands to grow them, and that's the source of all our food. So in the same way, metaphorically speaking, sentient beings are the field in which we grow our spiritual qualities. So it's in regard to them, in relation to them, that we accumulate merit and wisdom.
So that's it. That thing was it. And then the Ghana Yege, and then Rala, and that the one joint at the end, he kept on zipping one.
So creating merit, a big part of that is when we appreciate and cherish others.
That thing I mean, send you can do. You did don't like you, but they could round the relations. Don't get kind about around the rank events which is young summers. You did the what you but they could yin in relations. Canada.
I think it is stated in a guide to Bodhisattva's way of life where, every misery in the world and the problems, they come from self-cherishing attitude. And every goodness or the prosperity and good things in the world, that comes from cherishing others.
Oh. So that Kadampa Geshe so in those Sunday journey, Kuntusa de got a thank you till Tuni Sunguerma, the Haze pay Sunjet Sunguerma.
So as we listen to great Kadampa Geshe's personal advices, these advices are all firmly grounded in what Buddha has said in sutras and what the commentary treatises or the shastras have got to say. It's not like something appears randomly in their mind and then they just keep on giving these advices. All of these are based in Buddha's teachings. So that goes with all the authentic Buddhist literatures, whether it's sutra or tantra, that they must be able to trace back to what Buddha originally said, and that's important. So we need to cherish other sentient beings over the self because there are many good reasons. It is by way of cherishing other sentient beings that we are able to cultivate and experience the two types of bodhicitta or altruism. The conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. These bodhicittas could only arise when we learn to cherish other sentient beings. And eventually we could become a Buddha, fully enlightened being. That too depends on cherishing other sentient beings. So now we can see how important, precious sentient beings are to our own spiritual development. So everything we talk about and we find in this kind of a text are very important teachings to us. And it's not only that they just kind of spell out what are important for us, they also started to tell us how to cultivate these qualities. And we will stop there today. I don't have any special prayer request, but Geshe would like to remind all of us to think about many people, especially have died in the wars and under different circumstances. So we want to think about people who have lost their precious lives and together do prayer for them. And I just want to, remind you that if you would like to help us send some letters, this is, to our senators and congressmen and women,
help bring the repression in Tibet down, put an end. So we have got many copies of the letters in the lobbies, and also the address of the concerned officials that you could mail the letters to.
Hola, da tren ngaran chamalo lenki de kökin şebe gö zawla tene sanji tembaram bogeta jigirun de ne bata jaw yino be çebe tinzi şebe tamban de kure şebe temba de tuji gindo de be melro yowata an kö dunke ge şo poman de kündi şawana isan den robata gidince kam de gendo mente be çota da hene tunjin lo çota da be melro yowacho.
Let us dedicate our collective merit for the flourishing of Dharma, the source of benefits and happiness throughout the universe. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other holy masters live long and be successful in fulfilling their visions benefiting sentient beings. May spiritual communities throughout the world and spiritual practitioners from all traditions remain healthy, harmonious, and be successful in fulfilling their spiritual aspirations. May these and other world environments be free of all kinds of unwanted pains and problems, and beings find peace, happiness, prosperity, and spirituality.
Dona magin singi tamji nyama bada kiji debele tone sanji komparo boge tobi jochuchi.
Last but not least, we dedicate our collective positive energy for all kind mother sentient beings to be free from the fears and dangers of delusions as well as the imprints of delusions on our minds, and may we all reach complete enlightened state quickly. Actually, I forgot to say something, I think, because I didn't write it down. Most people know, what's happening in Tibet, and I think tomorrow is considered like a global action day. So across the world, Tibetans and friends are going to protest in front of communist consulates around the world. So I think tomorrow we have one at Los Angeles from 3 to 5. If we do have time, we would appreciate your support. And another news I want to share is that we feared that what happened in Tibet, because they were trying to blame the monks, for killing or destroying stuff. But we also suspected that communist police were, pretending to be monks' robes. And now the British satellites has got the evidence, and that I think a number of People's Liberation Armies were issued a set of monks' robes, and they were all carrying it. So they put on the monks' robe and then, pretend to be monks and, burn stuff and kill someone. So then they can claim down on Tibetans, So it's a very sad situation, but we're glad there's some satellite evidence have come up in a bit. All right, then you have a nice lunch.